What's up, Warriors? Brendan Schreiner here, and this is another episode of the Warrior 3 podcast. I got a really special guest on the podcast today, the voice of Warrior 3 podcast, Bruce Hooley himself, as we're going to be walking through his battle with stage 3 brain cancer. This is just an amazing story, amazing podcast. Make sure you share it, subscribe. I know you're going to be blessed. Also, go to warrior3project.com. That's warrior3, number 3, project.com. And click on that Join the Warrior 40. Yeah, you heard me right. It is finished. We've got what I believe to be one of the top challenges for men on the market today. For just $99, you can get access, lifetime access to fitness, to faith, to relationship coaching, everything that you would need to become a stronger man. Once again, go to warrior3project.com. Click on that Warrior 40 challenge. You're also going to get access to a private Facebook group so we can grow stronger together. Enjoy the podcast, gentlemen. All right, welcome, Warriors. It's finally here. Thank you so much for joining in for another episode of Warrior 3 podcast. Super excited. I got an awesome guest on today, a familiar voice, the voice of Warrior 3 podcast, Bruce Hooley. Bruce, thank you so much for being on, buddy.
Brandon, it's a measure of how much I wanted to be on your podcast that I now got the street cred to be on. So I can't wait to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome, man. It's just a blessing. You're an awesome guy, and I'm excited for God to work in this conversation. And men, hang on to your hats. This is going to bless your life tremendously. Before we get into it, I just want to let you guys know it's finally here. I know we've been talking about it for a while, but we've been really putting our heads down and grinding. There's been some struggle, some ups and downs, but warrior3project.com is finally here. So if you're listening, go to Warrior 3 Project. That's warrior number 3 project.com, and click on that Join Warrior 40. So we've created a Warrior 40 challenge for men, everything from your fitness to your faith, to building a stronger relationship with your family, your wife, your kids, and just being a better leader in business. It's $99. You get lifetime access to the 40-day challenge. There's multiple different levels. So if you're somebody who's really, hey, I have no idea. I've never picked up a Bible. I've never really had any kind of fitness coaching whatsoever. We've got beginner levels that we're calling strong. If you're kind of in the middle of the weeds, we've got stronger. And if you're just a stud that just wants to continue to be a stud in your faith, in your family, in your fitness, we've got a strongest option for you as well. The cool thing about the $99, you get lifetime access. So you get lifetime access to it. And the reason why we did 40 days is because as I was beginning to put this program together with some of the top coaches around the country, Jesus went 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. So he purposely put himself through physical, emotional, relational, spiritual torture to prepare himself for his ministry. And so this is 40 days of mind, body, spirit detox. And so we're super excited for you to take advantage of that. So once again, go to warrior3project.com, click on the Warrior 40 Challenge, purchase that. You can also get access to a private Facebook group. And every single week we're on there together as iron sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another, just, bouncing ideas off each other, just praying together. Life isn't easy, especially when you're trying to make a huge impact in this world. So without further ado, I want to introduce my man, Bruce. He's got a lot of different things that I can talk about here, but if you go to brucehooley.com, that's Bruce, HOOLEY.com. He's got all kinds of really cool stuff on there. We're going to have some links to his social media and different ways that you can reach out to Bruce. But Bruce is 35 years in communications, professional and dynamic public speaking skills. He's a published author, an accomplished reporter. You all know him on 98.9 FM, conservative talk radio, just a voice. He's been there with Chris Spielman, with the Buckeyes. I mean, the list goes on, and really just an amazing man, an amazing father, an amazing husband, and an amazing friend. And there's nobody else that I'd rather have on the podcast than you, Bruce. So thanks for joining me today, buddy.
Well, thank you, Brandon. And, you and I connected through the fact that we just have so many things in our lives that integrate. And you're a friend of Chris's. I'm a friend of Chris's. I was privileged to be able to write the story of Chris and Stephanie's 12-year breast cancer battle, which inspired so many people across Ohio and throughout the country. Chris and I are great friends. And when I knew you were Chris's friend, we had a lunch and we forged a relationship where we became part of what is now the Warrior 3 project. And I was the kind of the intro voice of that and kind of a helping voice of that. And I was looking forward to the day. And I knew there'd be a day when I'd be on your podcast. But God always knows what he's preparing us for before we know what he's preparing us for. And he was preparing me to have a bigger, I think, platform to speak to men for the things that are essential, built around the mission and purpose and values of Warrior 3. So it's super exciting for me to be here today under these circumstances and to share this conversation with you.
Well, I look forward to it. We've been chatting a little bit, and just to kind of build a little bit of context for the listeners, I want you to know that I really don't have a lot of questions. I don't have I really just wanted this to be an organic conversation to where the Lord will just kind of lead us where he wants to lead us. I know you got a lot of things on your heart, and God's doing some pretty amazing things in the midst of a storm. And in Warrior 3, we always say, we run into the storm. We don't, we don't hide back. We don't, kind of run away from it. But we run into it, because when we run into it, we actually spend less time in it than if we were to hide from it. So, Bruce, just how about you just kind of, bring the guys up to speed as to, what it is that you're going through currently, and, how that's beginning to shape you as a man, as a husband, as a leader.
Well, what I'm going through right now is the most exhilarating period of my life. 3 weeks ago, a little over, on my birthday, September the 12th, started as a normal day. Took my kids to school like I always do, 7:40 a.m. takeoff, drop them off at their school at 8 a.m. I went to work. I don't remember after 9 a.m., but I had a seizure. They what I remember is coming to in my chair and them asking me if I knew who I was. I did know who I was. Called my wife. Couldn't really. She didn't sound like herself, so I was off mentally in that I was pretty sure that whoever I had called was not my wife. So the EMTs took me in. They gave me a CT scan. And an hour or so later, I was sitting with an ER doc with my wife, and he said, "You have a brain tumor, and you're not going home until we take it out." They've taken out what they can. We have some kind of a treatment yet that we need to determine based upon whatever the pathology of the tumor is. We know it's a stage 3 tumor. So, I guess as a journalist, I buried the lead. I have brain cancer, but I go back to what the real lead is, and that is this has been the most exhilarating 3+ weeks of my life.
Wow. So a lot there, so tell me, obviously I know whenever the biggest thing that sticks out to my mind whenever I heard this is just, crap, I have, I don't know. I feel like ever since we started this journey a couple years ago in Warrior 3, the devil has just been under attack. The devil doesn't attack weak people. He attacks people that, are dangerous. And you're one of those guys. But whenever I talk to you about it, you were just in such good spirits. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, Bruce, I don't know if I would have had the same outlook on this as you have, but whenever you talked to Chris and you called Chris or he called you and you were talking through this whole conversation, the thing that came out of his mouth that really kind of shocked me, and I want you to kind of just expand on this a little bit, was good. I don't know too many people that would, their buddy calls them on the phone and says, "Hey, I've got stage 3 brain cancer." Good. Now I know what he means by that. I know what he means by that. Jocko Willink says that all the time. He's, a leader in the community. He speaks all over the world, and, people get annoyed all the time when they're like, "Hey, I went through a divorce," or, "Hey, I didn't get the job," or whatever. And he's like, "Well, good." So what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Like when someone says, "Hey, good, you have cancer," how has that kind of impacted you, and what has your response been in that?
Well, by way of explanation, you're absolutely right about Satan attacking. When you do a scouting report in football, they don't do a scouting report on the third team quarterback because they're not worried about him. Yeah. They're worried about the guy who can get the job done. So if you're under attack, man, you're on the target. So take strength in that. Chris, and how he and I have a unique friendship. And when I called him, because I owed him to hear this from me, because he had taken me into his confidence with his battle with Stephanie, and I wanted him to hear it from me. And I said, hey, little development, I got brain cancer, going to take tumor out. And he said, good, you were built for this. And what he meant was, you walked this road with Steph and I. And so you are built for this. And I understand they viewed it as a way to inspire, encourage, comfort others. And he focused me. He focused me because I was not thinking I need to blog about this, or I need to I didn't want people to think, oh, here's Bruce telling his pity party story, that. But Chris said, no, you have a talent. God's given you a talent to communicate. You need to communicate in great detail and great transparency, because it'll accomplish good things for other people. So that's kind of been the genesis of my launching my own kind of content platform around not just cancer content, but around sports leadership and in the headlines, because Chris and I used to do a podcast in that regard. But cancer and the treatment of cancer and the mentality that I have now, totally focused on the gospel, totally focused on helping men be great husbands and fathers and leaders, is covered by the umbrella of what your reaction, Brandon, would have been my reaction if this happened to you. I'd be like, that's awful. Brandon's got brain cancer. It's terrible. He's got a beautiful family. He's got a business. He helps so many people. I feel terrible for Brandon. I would feel terrible for you. You feel terrible for me because you love me, but I don't feel terrible for me because it's been the most and is the most exhilarating experience of my life. And I wouldn't go back and trade it. And that's what Chris told me after Steph died of cancer. He wouldn't go back and trade it because it allowed her to live with a focus that other people don't have, as this is allowing me to do the same.
I was thinking about this morning, just as I was praying through, this conversation and, where God would lead it. I mean, whenever someone says that this has been the most exhilarating time of my life, do you think that, I think there's a lot of men out there that are listening to this podcast that are kind of in coast mode. This will never happen to me. It's one and whatever. But the reality is that I think it takes a smack in the face. It takes a massive, linebacker coming across the middle and just laying you out for people to begin to wake up and realize that you may not have all the time in the world that you believe that you have. Do you think that this kind of diagnosis just kind of did that to you, to where it's now I've, the things that I've wanted to say, the things that I've wanted to do, the energy that I've wanted to have, the love, the joy that I wanted to experience. It's kind of like let it rip kind of moment. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And here's the thing, I was not living a lazy faith life. Yeah. God has used in my life before this first health challenge, God has pretty consistently used in my life job adversity, professional job adversity. I'm going to take away Bruce's money. I'm going to get Bruce's attention. That's actually the first blog I wrote about this, is called, I Won't Bury the Lead. There was a job I had in radio with Chris. It was the best job I ever had, but it was a morning radio job, and I was always tired and I was always grumpy, and it just was hard to get up at 3:30 in the morning and live a normal life. And I knew I was underperforming as a father and as a husband and as a friend. And so I was praying, hey, Lord, I want to get closer to you, right? Noble prayer, right? I want to be a better husband. I want to know my kids better. Noble prayer. Well, I didn't tell him how I wanted that to happen. And so he folded the station where I was working. So I didn't have any income. Well, that focused me on reading my Bible. And guess what I was able to do? I was able to accomplish all those things I wanted to do. Get closer to him, be a better husband, be a better father. I grew spiritually. I believe, Brandon, God sends adversity into our life as kind of an invitation to date him, to spend more time with him, to get to know him better. He loves us so much and wants us to be close to him. And he wants to use us and the talents he's given us, that he's going to craft our circumstances of life or call us in some way back to him, saying, hey, you might even think you're close to me right now, Bruce, but I can get you closer. I can help get you closer. I'm ready to reveal more of myself to you. And that will allow you to have a bigger impact for me. And guess what? You win in that too.
Man, it's super good. Super good. I think anytime I've ever gone through struggle, the struggle is never, it's not easy. Obviously, it's why it's called struggle. It's like if you want to bench or squat a certain amount of weight, you're going to have to go through struggle in order to get stronger. I always tell guys that, your heart, your mind, your faith is very much like a muscle. In order for it to grow, you have to strain it, to rip it, to break it down in order to actually produce hypertrophy. It's not like you can just think about it and it grows. You've got to actually put the work in and the effort in. What are some of the things that you have seen, grow in your life from just like being a husband and a father? Like how has this changed your communication, your outlook, the time that you get to spend with your wife and your kids? Like how has that changed since going through this?
Well, it really hasn't changed, Brandon, because I got teenage girls. I've got a college daughter. My wife is obviously now burdened a bit more. We have been overwhelmed with love by our radio audience, our church family, previous church families, friends like you. But it's unavoidable that when you're married to someone and you have teenagers, you shuttle around everywhere, and all of a sudden one of the shuttle drivers can't drive for at least 7 months. But that's going to make a teenage mom's plate, which is already full and heavy, is going to make it more full and heavier. So, I'm very much one to be mindful of the fact that, hey, dude, you got brain cancer. You don't get a pass on being a great husband. You got to still watch out, guard your wife, love your wife, protect your wife. And so I'm mindful of doing everything I can to keep Sherry's life as simple as possible, because that's tied to the needs my girls have, to not have her unavailable to them because she's caring for me. She cares for me. I know this is a blow, as it would be a blow to Dr. Sam if this happened to you, or anybody's spouse, you if it happened to her. But, our routine around the house really hasn't changed much, because I'm not in pain. I'm heightened in my focus. I'm doing great. And there may come a time where the immediate love and expressions of faith and provision that we're getting from people wane a bit. And in that time may be the time for my daughters to take on the caregiver role. But right now, nothing has changed in the short term. And I think that's a beautiful expression of the way God's ministering to us through other people.
Well, it's also a beautiful expression that if, not a whole lot has changed, that you were doing a really good job before you got diagnosed. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't claim that, but I appreciate the compliment.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of guys are like, you get put in a situation like you're in, and you look back and it's like, I got to change everything that I've done. But the fact that you've stayed the course, and what I always tell guys is that if you're 80% across the board, in your faith, your family, your fitness, your relationships, you can't be 100% in one and 10% in the other. I mean, that, and Warrior 3, we've got a thing kind of built into the Warrior 40. It's called the Warrior Wheel. So it's based off of Luke 10:27. Love you, Lord, to God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. So you've got these 4 different spokes of the wheel. And if you kind of track yourself throughout that process, you can't have 100% in one thing and then 10% in this, because then you've got an uneven tire. And if you've got a flat tire, not only are you a danger to those who are coming at you oncoming traffic, but you're also a danger to the ones who you protect in your car. And so, it's just good to see that, even though you're going through what you're going through, there was balance and there was stability, before that happened. One of the biggest things that I, just personally, just to be honest with you, when I heard this whole thing, it got me thinking. It got me thinking a lot about that I'm not bulletproof, that I can work as hard as I want to work to try to save the world. But ultimately, at the end of the day, It's my wife, it's my kids that are going to be there standing around me at the end. And I'm not saying that it's not important to, go share and to be a part of, trying to get this message out there. But the reality is that people across the world that are hearing this podcast, they're probably not going to show up in the deepest, darkest moments of my life, but it's my wife, it's my boys. And it really just kind of got me, it convicted me that I'm not bulletproof, that I can do everything that I can, but the bad things happen to really good people. And I think that's where people struggle in their faith, is that like, why does this happen to such good people? I mean, I've got a patient in my office right now, and I think to myself, like, this person is just such a good person. They do a lot of things very well. Like, why her? It should be the person who just neglects their faith, neglects their relationships, neglects their physical health. They're the ones that should be going through that. You ever think about that?
Yeah, I do. And I think about it in the context now of that becomes an impediment to so many people coming to authentic faith in Christ, because there is a very understandable mindset out there. Wow, this bad thing happened to me. My wife got killed in a car accident by a drunk driver. My child got raped. The escalating evil in our world, Brandon, I can't even fathom it. And people say, well, it's unfair. Well, of course it's unfair. But here's the mistake that people make. They look at, if you can picture this kind of conflict in their life and these things that come into their life that are unexpected and level them, they often view it as God causing it or allowing it. And he does. That's true. That's scriptural. But we think that it's only God, right? And if you were playing a game against somebody, playing a basketball game, like, you really do need to know who your opponent is. And people leave the evil one out of the roster of the opponent. A lot of times what happens to us is brought on by the evil one. And I view those evil things as, like, think of a saturated towel. Okay. You get the worst thing that can happen to you, and you've now been smacked across the face with a saturated towel. God can take that saturated towel and squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze something great out of it. The question is, are you going to get bitter because this happened to you? For whatever reason, it happened to you. Are you going to get bitter and refuse to allow yourself to have God squeeze the evil out of the situation and show you that he can drip something good out of it? Now, he prepared me with the mindset to be willing to look at it that way by bringing that job adversity into my life, by blessing me with a wife who has the exact same perspective on this, by lavishing me with blessings of 3 children who don't question that my main mission in life and their main mission in life is to walk out the Great Commission. So this has been a process for me to get here. If this had been God's way of calling me to obedience and to authentically, passionately articulating the Great Commission when I lost my job in radio, I would not have been equipped to do it the way that I believe he's showing me I'm equipped to do it now. And I don't try to predict exactly how he's going to walk out using this for me. I can let my ego get in the way, and I can picture myself on a stage talking to 5,000 men, and that's intoxicating to the old man, Bruce, because I really would love to have had that platform. That may be his will for me. His will for me may be no more than just talking one-on-one to someone I went to high school with who doesn't know Jesus Christ as their savior in life. So all of that to me is how we respond to adversity, when we can respond to it in a godly way that we can gain from and others can gain from, a sacrificial way, or you can become bitter and you can forget that you feel like, well, God's against me and I lost the game, when God's not the one who kicked your butt, dude. That was Satan. Like, pay attention. Look who's really in that other uniform.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of guys, Bruce, I mean, I think comparison, for a lot of men, especially men like you and I, who obviously we've been called by God to do big things, and, we want to be at the destination right there. and I actually heard this the other day. I was a podcast I was listening to that God's GPS is very, very different than Google's GPS. And Google's GPS is way better than God's GPS because all you have to do is put in your destination and it'll get you there the quickest way possible. But God's GPS is like, okay, put in your destination, but I'm not going to let you know when you're going to get there, and I'm probably not going to give you the easiest route possible. Do you think that, comparison and, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and just that whole concept of like, well, I'm a good guy, I'm a good man, I'm a good husband, I do the right thing, and so therefore I deserve to be at the destination as quickly as possible. I mean, I even, struggle with that in my life. It's like, I see, guys that are, gentlemen that are doing kind of what I'm working to do in men's ministry, and, guys that have had really big platforms, past NFL football players, guys that have, millions and millions and millions of dollars and things like that. And sometimes I can get caught up in, well, they're doing it this way, and so therefore I should do it that way. And then God's GPS is just very different. How do you navigate that?
Well, that's an ego issue for me. And God's blessed me with a wife who is wise and discerning and compliments me in every way. I have often complained about my salary. I listen to other radio hosts and I think, I'm better than that dude. Like, why is that dude making what he's making? Why has he got those endorsements? Why don't I? And she said to me one time, she said, do you believe God could pay you X where you are? And I'm like, of course. And she said, well, then why do you think he's not? And the answer is not because he doesn't want to bless me. It's because I got to learn something in the fact that he's not.
Yeah.
And the something is quite often that my attitude and heart are not where they need to be. And so he's going to withhold that from me until he gets my attitude and heart to where he wants it to be. Mm-hmm. And I love what you said about God's GPS. That's such a profound analogy because, and people have to always remember, Brandon, it is not God denying you, punishing you, frustrating you. He's taking you on his path, on his schedule to the destination. Maybe not on his schedule because he'd like you to get there right now. It's us who delays the schedule because we resist. But he wants to take us to a place where we could never get on our own. And it's not, you and I both have an athletic background. We understand team sports. You go to the star player and say, hey man, I need a little more from you today. Like you get me 15 and 10 on a normal night. I need 20 and 12 from you tonight. Mm-hmm. You don't go ask that of the sixth guy, seventh, eighth guy on the bench. You ask that of the star. Mm-hmm. When God is asking more of you, it's because he knows you have more to give and he's willing to help you give it. I say God's the best business partner you could ever have because he's about getting the job done in the way that is best for you.
Yeah, and I think that's just where ego sets in, especially for a lot of like high achievers and people that want to make a huge impact. It's just like, if it doesn't get done exactly when I want it done, the way that I want it done, or the way I see it, then oftentimes we take shortcuts. That GPS says, well, hey, go this way. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Like that's going to take 20 minutes longer than if I were to just take this back road. But then by the time we take the back road and find out that the GPS didn't say that there was a detour and everything else, then you get frustrated. And then you blame God. I love I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about when Jesus was, feeding the 5,000 and, the disciples were kind of focused on the fish, yeah. they were focused on like Jesus, like we don't have enough fish. And the reason was so profound to me and reading that story and hearing that story for many, many years, but Jesus was focused on the people. He wasn't focused on the fish or necessarily how it was going to happen, but his entire focus was on, I'm just concerned that people aren't going to get enough food. I'm not concerned about that. I'm focused on the people that need it. The disciples were focused on the actual material. They were focused on the actual how they're going to get there, and Jesus was ultimately focused on why and the destination. And that was just a huge thing for me, because men, I think, learning from that, it's like, we don't have all the answers. The GPS is going to take us where it wants to take us, but we have to focus on people. We have to focus on serving. We have to focus on not ourselves and how we feel, or, whether or not we're getting taken care of, but it's about other people. It's about, serving for the sake of serving and loving for the sake of loving versus, hey, what am I going to get out of this? Do you agree?
Totally true. I mean, you look at Christ's ministry, like, what did he do? I came to seek and to save those that were lost. I came to set the captives free. He wants us to open our heart to him. So he is about ministering to every need. And it's interesting, we are focused often on the tangible. We're studying Matthew, and I can't give you the exact scriptural references, but I believe after he had one of his instances where he fed the 5,000, they're in a situation again, and the disciples are like, well, where are we going to get food? And it's like, dude, you just fixed this problem. Mm-hmm. Like, are you paying attention? Mm-hmm. And I wonder how many times, Brandon, God looks at us when he's provided something for us, or he's brought us through adversity, and we get into something and we're like, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's like, hello, I'm right in front of you here. Like, have I not been there for you before? So yeah, we are in a battle where Satan tempts us to doubt him, because Satan fears us being aligned with God and teaming with God.
Well, I think it was Andrew Huberman was talking about a study where they took kids that love to draw, right? They love to draw, they love to paint, and they just studied them in the way of, hey, let's just study their brain waves and their dopamine and the joy that they get by just painting and drawing pictures, and it was off the charts. And the moment that they gave that child, we're going to see who draws the best picture. And there was some type of an outcome involved, and they weren't necessarily focused on the process. Their dopamine and their love for drawing and for painting went down. And I think that, plays a lot into what you're saying here, is that sometimes we can be so focused on the outcome or the destination that we forget to enjoy who we become and the relationship that we build and the closeness that we get with our Father in the process. So in this process that you're in, would you agree that it's more about who I become in this process of battling cancer versus like, I just got to get this cancer to go away? I mean, obviously that's the goal. The goal is I know in my mind that, Bruce is going to, be okay. And this thing's going to go behind us. But, oftentimes we focus on the outcome so much that we actually have so much of the process that we lose focus on. And that's where a lot of the joy and the relationship is built. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And Bruce is going to be okay. That is regardless of result health-wise, because as Stephanie Spielman so eloquently said, when it was very clear that she was reaching the end of her earthly life, and Chris had to explain that to her, given her evaluation, she said, well, you can't threaten me with heaven. Yeah. Which I thought was amazing, that perspective. But, Brandon, you're right. This is about me continuing to grow and all men continuing to grow through adversity. But look, let's talk about who we are, you and I are, and who we're talking to on Warrior 3. If you're going to buckle in on a Warrior 3 challenge, you are a highly motivated individual. You are a goal-oriented individual. You are an achiever, and God needs you to be an achiever. We are in a culture where masculinity is, and being a man, the way the Bible lays out for us to be men, we are in a culture that is attacking that. I want to affirm to our listeners, masculinity is biblical. Femininity is biblical. God has designed perfectly complementary roles between men and women. one can bleed into the other. We're not going to debate. Brandon and I aren't, nor should you be, dinner at 5:00 on the table night. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we each in our marriages have roles to play, and we need to be intentional and motivated about playing those roles, more so now than ever, because when you look around our culture, all the things that are designed by God have proven to build great marriages, great families, great influence, great achievement. All those things are under attack right now. And, you said in the beginning, he's a conservative radio host, and I kind of flinched because that's true. That has been true. It is not going to be true anymore, not because my politics are going to change in terms of which solutions I prefer, but because my awareness has changed that there are no political solutions. There are gradations of preferable policies to other less preferable policies, but the solution is on an individual basis, men and women devoting themselves to God, devoting themselves to each other in marriage, devoting themselves to their families. And let's put our energies into those things, because I know a holy God will reward those efforts.
So good. So good. When you were talking about, being a man and a masculine man, it's biblical. I was talking to a guy the other day, and not to be, it's just a funny concept to think about, because sometimes I go on long runs, I do ultra marathons, and someone would say, well, why do you do that? And I would say, because it's my time to wrestle with God. It's my time to just kind of like fight with him a little bit. And I was talking to someone the other day who's married and has got kids. And, Bruce, you ever think about like how much easier it would be as a man with a wife and kids to be able to relate to Jesus a little bit more if he was married and he had kids? Did you ever think about that? Like,
I haven't. That's a really interesting scenario for me to play out and work through. That's a very interesting scenario. I'll have to do that. I'm sure I could gain a lot from it.
No, I just was thinking this the other day. It's like, obviously Jesus is and will always be the greatest leader of all time. And, yep. Everything that the Bible says is true. And it's the greatest blueprint for how to be a man, for how to be a husband, for how to be a leader. I just wish that Jesus was married and had kids. Because I think sometimes it'd be a little bit easier for me to like get up in the morning after my son peeing on me, and my wife being pregnant and kind of going through just the ups and downs of carrying a child, like how to stay optimistic, and that, hey, just keep plugging through the process. If there was somewhere in the Bible where Jesus was married and he had to go through that. But anyway, that's a sidetrack, but it's something to think about for you listeners, that I struggle with the same thing. Bruce struggles with the same thing. But there is a blueprint for how to be a man, and that's biblical. I want to shift gears here real quick, and I just want to ask you a quick question as we begin to wrap things up here, Bruce, because a lot of awesome concepts and meat and potatoes in this podcast. If you had 5 minutes and you had that stage, and I think one of these days that you will have that stage. I see that in my mind. You're there in front of a lot of men sharing your story. Let's just say you had that, in a month from now. You had time to prepare for it. You had 5 minutes in front of a stage of 20,000 guys in Ohio State Buckeye Stadium. You had 5 minutes. What would you tell them? Like, what would you tell the men in that 5 minute block?
Well, I'd say we're in Ohio Stadium today, guys, and you know how it works in here. You get 6 points for a touchdown. You kick the extra point. You get 3 points for a field goal. You get 4 downs to get a first down. Your objective is to gain more yards, score more points than the other team. You know the rules. You know how the score is kept, and you know how the verdict is rendered. Are you sure you know how the score is kept and the verdict is rendered in the most important game, which is, Are you going to live forever, or are you going to be eternally condemned? Because if you think the score of that game is determined by your behavior, you have the rules wrong. The score of that game has already been determined by Jesus Christ at the cross. He has won the game for you, but you have to accept the win. You have to understand that your behavior does not and cannot earn you salvation. You have to understand that he has a standard. The standard is perfection, and you can't meet the standard. But here's the great news. All those quiet moments where you're beating yourself up because I'm not good enough, I didn't do this right, I didn't say this, I wanted to say this, I stifled it, but boy, I'd really like to say it. All those moments when Satan is telling you, you're not good enough, you can never be good enough. There's only one answer to that question, gentlemen, and that answer is, you're right. I know, but I don't have to be good enough because Jesus Christ was good enough on my behalf. There's a reason why Christ, as his life here on earth passed away, said, it is finished, because he finished the act necessary for our redemption, for our cleansing, where we are viewed by God as holy, as pristine, as blameless, as qualified. Jesus settled it. Think of it, guys, as if I walked up to you and I gave you a $500 gift card to the most ornate, fancy, delicious steakhouse you've ever been to. And you'd be like wondering why I did that. But the real question would be, are you going to use it or not? Because you can have it, and if you don't use it, you'll never get to experience what I am experiencing now, and what anyone who has placed their entire trust for forgiveness of sin, redemption from sin, and eternal life in Jesus Christ. He's got the gift card and he's handing it to you. You don't just have to take it. You got to take it and you got to cash it in. You got to own it for yourself and believe that it is true. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved. That's what I would say.
Well, I think we can just wrap it up right there, Bruce. I mean, that's, I knew that's what you were going to say, but the way you said it, man, it's just so good. I appreciate you being on the podcast. I appreciate you being a strong man. I appreciate you being a warrior. We need more people in this world like Bruce Hooley for sure. You guys can go to brucehooley.com. That's Bruce, HOOLEY.com. Check it out. It's got an amazing blog going. He's kind of going through what he's struggling with and just how to use that for the good and the glory of Jesus, which is what I love about him.
I'm not struggling. I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing.
Good. Also, guys, make sure you go to Warrior 3 Project. That's Warrior number 3 project.com. Click on that, join the Warrior 40. We all need to get stronger, regardless of where you're at, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And if you feel like you're really strong, then we just need to keep that up. It's just about maintenance at that particular point. So go there, get plugged in, you get access to a private Facebook group, and let us help you become a stronger man. Let's just do it together. So on behalf of myself and Bruce, we pray that you guys have an amazing, strong day. Stay strong, gentlemen.